to Everything We Do is Magic, or as I call it, Udom. This is the show, this is the program, this is the content where we explore magic and just how easy and real and relevant and close to you it is. Well, this week we got one of our most popular videos. In fact, our most popular video by views, far outdistancing all others, is the first episode of Creating Magical Servitors. Servitors are energy beings that you create to complete certain tasks or bring certain things about. And so one of the questions that just came up this week was, how do I know the servitor is born and real? Well, the short answer I can give you is because you were the creator. You created it, there's no doubt. But the deeper answer takes a little while to dig out. And today we'll talk about that deeper answer. We'll talk about how patterns affect creation, and how patterns affect the creation of the servitors, and how you can recognize that your servitors are created through recognizing those patterns. My friend JMO, we were talking about intelligence this week, and he said that the intelligence, he defines it as the ability to discern patterns, to recognize patterns. And I think it's also the ability to not only recognize and discern those patterns, but to be able to decipher their meanings. And if you look around, everything in nature happens in patterns. There's patterns in the way that flower petals are created. There's patterns that we see commonly in the cuts of meat that we take from our pigs. Just everything in nature has a pattern in it. And Nikola Tesla recognized that. Nikola Tesla said that he who understands the secrets of the 3, 6, and 9 understands the secrets of the universe. Or so, I'm paraphrasing, probably bastardized the quote realistically. But there is a Tesla method to manifestation that's often used. And what Tesla recommended was that in the morning, if you have an intention, you write that intention 3 times. And in the middle of the day, you write that intention 6 times. And in the evening, you write that intention 9 times. Now, I've heard it pushed even a little further that you read those intentions aloud each time you're writing them. And what that does is that creates a pattern into the universe, a pattern into creation of your intention, because your words carry those vibrations. Now, the power of the 3, 6, and 9 is, of course, the power of the Fibonacci, where as the wheel turns, that power intensifies from the 3 to the 6 to the 9, and on and on and on, constantly growing. So it has no alternative but to manifest. So, cool rabbit trail, Mitchell. But how does that answer the question, how do I know that my servitor is real? Well, first of all, let's look at the process you go through in creating the servitor. How many times do you read over every aspect of your servitor, from its name to its appearance to the specific tasks that you have for it? How many times do you read through that during the creation of the servitor process? Now, I'm not going to go back and look, but I'm pretty sure it's at least 3 or 4 times that and even more than that if you're changing things until you come down to your final outcome. And then with that final outcome, you're repeating it, and then you're attaching an emotion to it. So you're attaching an additional vibration to it. So by that time, that pattern has become written, so to speak, upon your life track, just like all the other patterns. Now you may say, what other patterns do I have on my life track, right? How many times do you find yourself circling around and coming to the same dead end? The same, you've circled, you think you're making progress, and all of a sudden you're back in this same cul-de-sac, same dead end that you've always wound up in. And it's because of patterns, and because we like to operate on patterns. It's somewhere in our DNA where what did I hear it said? It's better to work lazy than to work smart, because a lazy man will figure out the smartest way to do it. And that's a lot of what magic is. I've heard magic defined as finding the loopholes. Well, you can't find the loopholes unless you can discern the pattern. And that's why meditation, again, I come back to that so often, is so important, so that you can find your way back to what are the patterns, what are those patterns that I fall back into, and then how do I create the new patterns? Creating the new patterns is where the power of the servitor comes in, because it takes the ego me, which seems to be focused on the thoughts that I think other people think of me, reflection, the things that are reflecting back upon me, and it moves our mindset to the id, outside of ourselves, where we're actually watching the creative process. That's what will happen. That's one of those things that will happen to you, or that will come about, I guess I should say, as you go about creating a servitor. And I think that's where people get this whole idea of, or the doubt comes in about, is it real? Because it feels totally different, because you're used to creating from your ego, which sends the idea out and waits for the patterns to develop and then rides with the patterns, where now what you're doing is, because you have set a determined pattern for this being, you are now creating from the id, creating from the true you, creating from the divine. You are joining in the creative process. Now, for some people, they will never actually see with their eyes or even with their spirit their servitors. Some people will see with their eyes their servitor. Some people will see with their spirit their servitor. But the thing is, but I'll go back to a passage from the Christian scriptures that says, walk by faith and not by sight, which I take to mean walk by your intuition, because your sight can mislead you. Your senses can mislead you. Your senses can be fooled, but your intuition, your divine nature, your complete whole you cannot be deterred. So when you're creating your servitor, the very act of you going beyond the need for proof, the very act of you assuming its creation brings about its creation. And I'll go back to my last video where I talked about how we are living in the past in our senses, because everything that happens, I could prick my finger. My finger, the pin would penetrate my finger a nanosecond before the sensation of pain would reach my brain. But the sensation that I'm feeling is a past event. That's already happened. And that's because of living through the ego. That's because of living from the outside in. That's because of living with this experience of reflecting off of what we assume others think of us, others believe of us, others see of us. But the creative process that you use in creating the servitors, and that's really what I think the power of this is in the creative process, in developing those patterns of action that puts you into a forward thinking mode, where you're seeing this thing as whole and complete and fully developed. Now, don't be afraid of creating servitors in the sense that it's some being that's going to go out of control, Frankenstein monster kind of thing. It's creating servitors, and again, everything we do is magic. So I want to bring it back down to real simple stuff. We create servitors all the time. The spell work that I'm doing is kind of trying to specify and intensify and kind of zero in on what you want to create. But just to give you an example, I am actually a servitor in my wife's consciousness. one night she sat out in her driveway and listed out the things that she wanted in a husband and released that to the universe. Well, I checked all the boxes. And so what I want to, and that's just the incredible, that's the freaky thing about quantum entanglement, is that she could have that individuated expression that would result in me, and my individuated expressions of desires result in what brings her about, and how we are all so interconnected. And I'll close with this. I know I've kind of rambled today, but there's a lot going on up there. There's a lot going on uh, in the world right now, a lot of energy, a lot of high vibrational happening. But I'm sitting in this place. We're waiting to pick up Tyson, my grandson, and we're sitting in the Buc-ee's in at the off the interstate here. And if you've never been to a Buc-ee's, it is like it is the amusement, is the Disney World of convenience stores. This place is absolutely packed, and I start watching people come through, and I'm noticing the differences in their appearances, and then it hits me, the Jungian idea that everyone that I'm seeing is a reflection of me. There's something about my personality, some perspective that I don't see, because we're all reflecting not me, but the divine me. And suddenly, my view of others changes. The way that I was perceiving them and looking at them changed. I moved from judging them as tall, short, fat, ugly, whatever, pretty, whatever, to just watching them. And for a brief time there, I truly understood the meaning of the words namaste, because I recognized the divine in everyone. And that's the whole reason for the patterns. That's the whole reason for the magic. That's the whole reason for this life, is for us to define our own divinity and define the divinity in our fellow beings. Namaste.